Hello everyone, this is Shannon from That's So Po, and today I'm doing week 3 of my 2022 reads. This week I read another great batch of books, although I did have a DNF. Timestamps and content warnings are in the description box below. The first book that I finished was Class Act by Jerry Craft. This is the sequel to New Kid, which I read recently and really loved, and Class Act was just as good, just such a great middle grade graphic novel. So Class Act is basically following a couple of kids. This one is centering on the best friend of the main character from the first book, but them dealing with being Black in this sort of elite academy that is filled with a lot of white people. There is a ton in here about really kind of growing up and integrating into a new place in a new school, and also still retaining a lot of your roots, a lot of issues of feeling like you don't fit in, lots of microaggressions based on race, especially because the character from the first book is a lighter skinned Black guy, and then the kid from the second book is a darker skinned Black guy. And so them just kind of like dealing with how people interact with them and how that changes based on just the tone of their skin color. So that's in there. There's also just a lot about growing up and about really kind of finding your friends and finding yourself. So another excellent book. I really definitely recommend this series. I gave this 5 out of 5 stars. Next, I read Bad Witch Burning by Jessica Lewis, which was awesome. I loved this book so much. I'm gonna have a review for it out later this week, and just, oh, I loved it so much. So basically, this is a contemporary dark fantasy / horror novel that is about a 16-year-old girl, Cottrell, who's really struggling in some very intense poverty and forced to some desperate measures. She has an ability to see ghosts, and for years she's been doing a little bit of a side gig where she gets a little bit of money for helping people talk to the ghosts of their dead loved ones, except that her magic is changing. And instead of being able to talk to ghosts, now she resurrects dead bodies. And that is a very different magic, but also a much more lucrative one. And so she's put in some difficult situations, but makes some interesting decisions based on that. This book is so cool. It has just got this really cool, creepy atmosphere, and it's just the way that the magic unfolds and the depths of the characters. I loved Cottrell as a main character. She is this intensely angry and strong and resilient character who has power that she's coming into and having to make some pretty tough choices about how to use it. And it's filled with so much friendship and love and all sorts of wonderful things. I really, really adored this book. There are definitely some content warnings, so check those out in the description box below. But even though I don't generally like, horror too much, I loved this one so much, and I don't think that it was graphic in the way that it had kind of the horror elements. So really, really loved this one. Highly recommend it. I gave it 5 out of 5 stars. It's totally a new favorite, and please check out my review later on this week because I just really wish that everybody would pick up this book. And then I read the last 2 books in the Hilda series by Luke Pearson, Hilda and the Stone Forest and Hilda and the Mountain King. So these 2 books are the last book in the Hilda series, and they're really more like a part 1 and a part 2. There's a bit of a cliffhanger between the 2 of them, but they round out the series pretty well. So just like all of the previous books, the illustrations in this are fantastic. I loved Hilda as a character. I really loved the way that the panels are done. I love the storyline. There's a lot in this too, really developing this idea of the humans and the trolls and sort of their interactions and the way they view each other and the way that they treat each other, these sorts of things. It was sort of started in the first book introducing the idea of trolls, but here it really develops it and fills it out. So I thought all of that was awesome. The books were a little bit too action forward for my tastes, but they are middle grade, so that makes sense. And I didn't love that there was a cliffhanger in the middle of them, and the last book had a couple of messages that I wasn't 100% sure if I agreed with, but they were definitely good books and good conclusions to the series. I gave both of them 4 stars. And lastly, I did DNF one book, which was A Spy in the Struggle by Aya de León. I heard about this from Cynthia at BookWhimsy. I will link her as well as her review for this book below. And it sounded really, really cool because it is a romance novel with a huge focus on social justice, which sounds just up my alley. However, I only got 7% through this before I realized, not quite my thing. And I should have known it from the title, because just as much as this is a book that focuses on things that I like, it also is sort of a book that is very spy and espionage heavy and sort of follows a little bit more of almost like a police procedural type of feel. And so it's very much focused on that aspect and almost like an action-based, the police did this and that sort of thing. So that wasn't quite what I was looking for, but the politics in this were super, super cool. We basically follow a woman who is a lawyer, and she ends up working for the FBI, and they send her undercover into a Black Power youth movement that is also focusing on kind of like ecological issues, because that group is interfering with a contract that the military wants to have. And so there's all of these real cool political messages in this, but the writing was just not my style, and I think the romance doesn't come in until the latter half of the book, which just, I don't know, it wasn't quite what I was looking for. So definitely really cool things about this book, and if that idea of like this social justice book with a romance maybe subplot, I'm not positive, interests you, definitely check out Cynthia's review, because this might be a cool read for you. Okay, that is everything that I read and DNF'd this week. If you guys have read any of these, if you have any thoughts, anything you want to chat with me about, just leave me a comment down below.